Okay, I'm ready. Becoming.
Trials and errors make us strong if we learn how to just move on and not give in when we fall. Falling down and getting up when we will not be stuck in the places where we fall. We must see that there's so much to be. Keep on living through the trials we will see. Becoming who we'll be, it's not that hard if we can see. We've got to keep growing and not get stuck. Becoming you and me, we will become who we will be if we just hold on and not give up. We'll keep becoming. Oh, yeah. When we fall down, we must get up. We cannot get stuck in a rut, for then we'll see it's really not that bad. Many times we find ourselves caught up in all kinds of mess, and that's the plan that we'll give up. Oh, but we must see that there's so much to be. Keep on living through the trials we will see. Becoming who we'll be, it's not that hard if we can see. We've got to keep growing and not get stuck. Becoming you and me, we will become who we will be if we just hold on and not give up. Becoming who we'll be, it's not that hard if we can see. We gotta keep growing and not get stuck. Becoming you and me, we will become who we will be if we just hold on and not give up. We'll keep becoming, oh, becoming. We'll keep becoming, oh, becoming. Not what I used to be, not quite what I will be becoming. I'll keep becoming. Said I'm not what I used to be. Not what I used to be. Not quite what I will be becoming. I'll keep becoming. I'm not what I used to be. Not what I used to be. Not quite what I will be becoming. I'll keep becoming. Said I'm not what I used to be. Not what I used to be. What I will be. Not quite what I will be becoming. I'll keep becoming. I'm not what I used to be. Not what I used to be. Not quite what I will be becoming. I'll keep becoming. Not what I used to be. Not quite what I will be becoming. I'll keep becoming. We must see that there's so much to be. Keep on living through the trials. We will see. We will see that there's so much to be. Keep on living through the trials. We will see. We will see that there's so much to be. Keep on living through the trials. We will see. We'll keep becoming. Yes, you and me will be becoming.
Great, wonderful evening to each and every one of you. And thank you so much for joining in with us with the Soul Situations for February of 2021. I am your host, the Reverend Shonda Nicole Gladden, and it has just been my joy and my privilege to spend time with so many of my friends and so many of you every single month at this time at 8:15. So February 15th, March 15th, April 15th, all of the months on the 15th of the month, we will be right here. And I sure hope that you will plan to be right here as well. So go ahead and begin to let us know where you're joining in from by giving us some information in the comments. You can say where you are located in the world. You can say who invited you. You can say why you're excited about tonight's topic of conversation. Just whatever it is that's on your heart and on your mind, please drop it into the chat there and let's begin to have some conversation. The beautiful thing about this is that this is interactive. It works best when you submit your request. So if we're doing something on the screen that you're like, hold up, that's not quite what I signed up for, please make sure that you chime in and let us know so that we can be intentional to steer the conversation in the direction that makes sense for all of us. But what is tonight's conversation all about? Well, friends, the Soul Situation Room is always about the spirit of universal liberation, that these are conversations that touch the soul. And tonight's conversation that's touching the soul is one that touched my soul. It is about the enduring legacy of mutual aid societies. And that's such an interesting phrase, right? I don't know about you, but begin to drop in the chat. What is it that you know about mutual aid societies? Have you heard of them? Do you have a definition of what one is? Are you a part of one? Did you just chime in tonight to see what you could learn about them? Whatever you come to this conversation with tonight, I want to inspire you and hope that you will leave with a little bit more, perhaps, than what you came with, because we have some dynamic thought leaders who are coming to this conversation tonight with a little bit of information about mutual aid societies. And so before I take too much time, let me just get on into it by introducing our guests. First, I want to bring to the stage in the Soul Situations Room the Reverend Andre C. Guilford Jr. Reverend Andre works at the intersections of education, ministry, and community organizing as a high school teacher in a local public school within the Detroit area. He's also an associate minister in the area of social justice at Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church. Reverend Andre's work is committed to the uplift of all Black people, especially queer folks finding home within the Black church. Reverend Andre, hello, my brother. How are you?
It's a pleasure to have to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for saying yes. You know, a lot of the reason that we're even having this conversation tonight is because of an interaction you and I had on social media. So I am really excited to jump into the conversation. We may not have a deep and abiding friendship, but it is certainly one that I am pleased to have a spotlight on tonight. So don't get antsy. Don't go anywhere. I want to introduce our second guest, Mrs. Kiana W. Davis. She is a finance and operations professional. Looks like someone in the chat, in the comments, already says, I've heard of this one, because not only is she a professional and an author, a community activist, a speaker, and a philanthropist, as well as the CEO of Mind Your Business Accounting and Consulting, where she specializes in finance, accounting, and tax strategies for her clients. She has served on numerous nonprofit boards and organizations, including currently as the African American Legacy Fund of Indianapolis and Leadership Indianapolis. And what she did not include in her bio is what one of our viewers is already talking about, and that is the fact that she is wonderfully married to the senior pastor of Crossroads AME Church. Hello, Ms. Davis. Go ahead and unmute yourself and let the people
Hi, good evening, Reverend. Good evening, Andre. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh, I can't wait to get into this conversation because two of the people that are brilliant in thought and brilliant in action, y'all are getting ready to stir up the pot here in the Soul Situation Room. But not before we welcome to the stage my brother, mi hermano, the Reverend Fernando Rodriguez, who currently serves as the Associate Presbyter for Mission. After pastoring congregations in Indiana, where I was pleased to meet him and become his friend, he also pastored in Delaware and Michigan, all for more than 10 years. Now he is serving as Associate Presbytery, where his main responsibility is to serve as support, catalyst, and advocate for new worshiping communities, basically new churches, startup churches, plants, etc., and communities of color in the Denver Presbytery, as well as general mission efforts throughout the Presbytery. Fernando is married to Casilin Santiago, and they have two children, Matias and Sionali. I hope I pronounced my niece and nephew's names correctly, but come on to the Soul Situation stage, my brother. Hello, Reverend Fernando.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Reverend Shonda. It's great to be here with you guys.
Oh, it's so good to see you tonight and so good to have you here. I just want to let you know we have folks joining in with us from Atlanta, Georgia. They want you to know that they are here and ready to hear from you. And as I shared earlier, one of our wonderful guests who's watching on the other side of the screen is none other than the Reverend Jerry E. Davis III, my brother pastor and your phenomenal husband. But we also have somebody joining in, one of the good, faithful stewards of Crossroad, our vice chair of the Social Justice Commission, and many others who are chiming in on YouTube as well as Facebook. So friends, go ahead and let us know where you are joining in from. But before we get there, let's get into this conversation, friends. What made you say yes? I want each of you to first give a little bit about who you are, how we met, if you want to, and just a brief introduction of yourself. I know I introduced you in a formal way, but if you had 60 seconds to tell our guests and our viewers, which you do, why you said yes tonight, what would you say? I'm going to go ahead and start with Reverend Andre.
Well, I was really surprised when Reverend Shonda reached out to me because I was more like, what do I have to say about this? But I met Reverend Shonda at the Forum for Theological Exploration, one of the, I believe, the Christian leadership conference, something like that, years ago. Years ago. And that really gave me insight as to my own ministry discernment. And since then, I've been doing all kinds of various things. But my commitment has always been to Black people. And in the last year, through the pandemic and the racial injustice, unrest that was happening across the country, kind of found myself reactivated, really, and was able to, get involved. So when I posted that comment about mutual aid societies, it was really from experience of being involved, not because I wanted to, but because we had to. It was impossible for you to just sit on the sidelines and see all the suffering that was happening around you and not do something about it, especially if you believe in God and you believe in the ministry of Jesus Christ. You call it activism. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that. If you have never done anything outside of the four walls of the church before the summer of 2020, at this point in February of 2021, Lord knows, I hope and pray that you have found yourself being called and committed to doing things outside. So thank you for saying that, Reverend Andre. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into what that comment is. I know y'all are out there in the chat saying, well, what did he say? You're going to have to wait to hear exactly what that is. But Ms. Davis or Reverend Fernando, either one of you, give us your 60 seconds of why you said yes. Who are you?
Yeah, well, I've learned that Reverend Shonda is very persistent and very convincing. So that's probably why I said yes. No, but it's an intriguing topic. like Reverend Andre, I have some experience with it and vaguely have some studies around it and stuff. But it's a really interesting concept because I think a lot about what it means to be community. And in my job, that's my basic question when someone comes to me is, so how are you thinking about gathering community that otherwise wouldn't gather? That's kind of like the foundational question for my work. And then supporting that and hopefully allowing that to flourish in important ways. So that's what attracted me to the topic, and that's a little bit of what I do currently.
And last but not least.
Yes. Well, Reverend Shonda, we have known each other through the church. And so you have served faithfully in the church. I've seen you pastor, senior pastor, associate pastor, executive pastor. And so in our denomination, in our tradition, if you are remotely integrated into the activity and life of the church, you would have come across Reverend Shonda Nicole Gladden. And so I am so glad that we met, I want to say probably 10 years ago.
Yes.
And we have seen each other grow from what we call young adulthood to now we're just older. How about that?
Older. Which is older. Better.
And so it is always my pleasure to be a part of anything that you produce, are part of, because I know it will be done not only with excellence, but really with a sense of selflessness and really thinking about others. And so that is not a hard thing to sign up for. As I always say, I feel like a super woman or somebody, because during the day I'm an accountant. That's just, I'm a bean counter during the day. At night, I feel like I want to save the world, right? And so that is just who I am. I never embrace this term community activist, but I guess that's what I am. And it is something that I've been for a very long time, just being very concerned, regardless of what I do professionally, just being very concerned. So I always say I use my marketplace ministry to help other ministries thrive, survive, grow, etc. And so as far as this conversation of mutual aid, I call it a fancy title for all the organizations that I'm a part of. How about that? That I delve into, I give my heart and soul for, I give my money to, right? I not only my time, but my money also. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Well, I want to thank again all three of you for your yes. You know, when I was imagining this conversation, it dawned on me that, you know, from descendants of enslaved Africans to Latina, indigenous and immigrant communities, this concept of mutual aid societies, they've historically enabled all kinds of people to access the capital and networks of solidarity and important pathways to what I like to call communal flourishing. And so as we think about communal flourishing, you know, in full transparency, as I have already said, Reverend Andre, you began a conversation, or you chimed in on a conversation on Facebook as you were doing some sort of tracking of mutual aid societies in the United States. And so I have been thinking about, how do I connect what my soul situations topic will be for February with our AME Church Founders Day, which we just began celebrating yesterday. We'll continue celebrating throughout the month of February, as well as the work that I do in the community. And the notion of mutual aid societies began percolating. And then your comment kind of sealed the deal and confirmed it. So can you tell us a little bit about, what did you say? What does it mean that you are tracking mutual aid societies, and how do you help us to get into this conversation?
So when you posted, I posted a comment in reference to what a good friend of mine, Candace Marie Bimbo, was talking about as far as helping, and she does some really great work Ms. Davis mentioned, that it's just part of like what we do, right? You just give money and you just, support people where necessary. So I believe I was talking about the plethora of mutual aid societies that are present around the United States, particularly how it goes way back into really times of slavery. Where African Americans kind of met the need when it arose. I think there are, so a couple years ago, actually I was really involved with Black Lives Matter here in Detroit as it was starting, and also Black Youth Project 100. I was a member of that organization for a long time. And in those organizations, I kind of got introduced to mutual aid societies while I was in college. And there was this circling Google Doc of all the different mutual aid societies across the United States. And I didn't really tap into it for real until I got to DC. And it was in the middle of the pandemic. And, people were like, I was teaching, I've been teaching for the last 5 years or so, and there was a lot of need. A lot of kids needed some help with, food. A lot of kids had parents or grandparents who had, who were sick from the coronavirus, who had lost jobs as a result of that. And we need to find a way to meet the need, right? The need was becoming great. It was becoming exacerbated as a result of the pandemic. So I decided to go back to my Google Drive and pull up this document and found that there was a pretty legit mutual aid society that was in the Washington, D.C. area. And it kind of piqued my interest. I started to find out that there was other mutual aid societies across that metropolitan area of Washington, D.C. So not just Washington, D.C., but also Maryland, Virginia, in North Carolina, it was in other places, and started to tap into it in Facebook. Facebook has a whole group for mutual aid societies in various locations, and we just I went into this Facebook page, and I noticed that there was all these people that were just posting need. They needed all these various things. They needed food. They needed housing. They needed, furniture for a house. There were people who were posting like, oh, I have this kind of food that I want to give away. Is there anyone who needs it? Or there were people who were crowdsourcing to help somebody with a birthday party because a child did not have the parent did not have enough resources to help them with their birthday party. So I just started to kind of dig into that and wanted to be involved and volunteer for that kind of stuff. And I found it to be really intriguing. But the crazy part about it is that the mutual aid society wasn't completely ran by Black people. It was a coalition of people. So there were whoever who had the resources to offer. They made themselves available. So I thought it was a really interesting kind of concept. So that's why I posted that comment. It's like, people don't know about this stuff. It's not made readily available for people. People should know about it because there's so much need out here and there's so many people who can offer to meet those needs.
Yeah, no, I love what you said, that there's this notion that if you see a need, you serve the need, that people aren't necessarily in a position of leadership or authority, but as you have seen mutual aid kind of emerge, it is just everyday people, perhaps people like you watching our stream today, that just say something needs to be done with what I'm seeing and I need to help. Now that can serve in a sense of crowdsourcing. Maybe we see GoFundMe. I know you mentioned Candace Marie Bimbo, and I think if anybody's on social media, you have heard of her because she has definitely been one of the leaders, if you will, of if she has heard about someone who needs something, she just says, y'all send me a Cash App or send me a PayPal. And she's raised hundreds of maybe even thousands, I know, of dollars to assist. Another person I think of is Reverend Melva Sampson and her Pink Robe Chronicles, that she too has also kind of deployed this notion of mutual aid. And so, by definition, as we said, mutual aid is a voluntary reciprocal exchange of resources and services for mutual benefit. That is selflessness, if you will, as to quote Mrs. Davis, that we would give of ourselves, not because we hope to get something back. It's not a reciprocity, but it's a reciprocal exchange, right? And so I love how you have said also is that this is not something that just Black people have done. And I know that I want to, in Black History Month, have this deep and meaningful conversation specifically about Black people, but I want to deviate just a little bit because there is Reverend Fernando Rodriguez. I'm going to bring you out just briefly because when you think about not just Black people, have you heard of mutual aid in your Puerto Rican upbringing? How does this conversation even kind of hit your ear or hit your spirit?
Yeah, I had never heard of the term formally, or if I had forgotten it, but the concept is certainly there. One of the things that comes to mind almost immediately is in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, where the devastating Category 5 hurricane, September 20th of 17, devastated the island, and it was the breakdown of an already frail system broadly defined, and people were wondering, well, all right, so how are we going to get together? How are we going to survive, actually? And shortly after the hurricane, there was a lack of response, especially to remote areas, by government institutions, etc., and people just took matters into their own hands. And in several instances throughout the island, they took over abandoned schools and created community centers out of them. It's the Red de Apoyo Mutuo, mutual support network.
Maybe put it in our chat here, because I will butcher it if I even try to say it in Spanish. I know I will butcher it if I try to write it in Spanish.
Mutual support network, essentially, is what it is. Red de Apoyo Mutuo.
Red de Apoyo Mutuo.
Very good. Yeah. And so, yeah, they came about throughout different parts of the island. They spread out fairly quickly. And there's been a really interesting grassroots movement through them and other entities like them throughout the island, but also in Latino communities throughout the United States, because mutual aid societies essentially rise up out of need. And it was already mentioned, right? It's a matter of survival. So who do we have? Well, we have each other. In the neighborhood and families in similar immigrant groups. In Indianapolis, when I was a pastor there, I found out about, it was like a lending tree of sorts system that happened, that you bought into it, if you will. And when it was your week, you got whatever was in that pot. And then you gave money on a weekly basis, and then someone else. And all of these things you never really hear about. What you hear about is, the crime or the bad things in our communities oftentimes, but we fail to see that there are always life springing up, because it's a matter of survival for a lot of our communities.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because this notion of grassroots work springing up, and then you pay into a pot or a system, and when it's your turn, that there's some resources that might be available. I'm so glad I listened to the Spirit and deviated, because this leads right into what Mrs. Davis does. I know that you are the president of the African American Legacy Fund in Indianapolis. And so in light of what Reverend Rodriguez has just said, help us to understand what might Alfie look like? Because I think Reverend Rodriguez is right on to something.
Yeah, so the African American Legacy Fund was an idea birthed to say that there are resources in our own community, or those who are supporters of our community, in which we could use together to support initiatives in our community. And really, from a philanthropic perspective, you can consider it a giving circle. You can consider it it's not a lending circle, because this is philanthropic money, right? So the idea that we all have some resources, whether it's $1, whether it's $10,000, that we collectively pull our monies together to support initiatives or organizations doing initiatives that benefit our community. And so there are a lot of people, like a lot of like-minded people like me out there who really see what we have in our community, all the assets. So just the asset base of it, instead of, I love what was said earlier, that what we hear is all of the problems in our community, but there are resources in our community. There are actually genuine assets in our community in which if we pull together everything, we can do some substantial, have some substantial impact. And so really that's ALFI. It is a simple as part of it is it's a giving circle, big community giving circle in which we're just asking people to really buy in the vision that we have more to offer than not, and we can pull together our resources to solve our problems and or issues or highlight the things that are good. And I'm really proud of it. This was something that was birthed about the idea about 3 years ago with just several community folks, myself and a handful of people, and about 8 or 9 of us kind of marched this to kind of full fruition. And we're just really proud of its genesis. But, you know, the idea of mutual aid societies, you know, you read about it, but really a lot of the philanthropic organizations out there that we have can probably at one point had as genesis in this concept of mutual aid and have morphed into something more formalized in our communities, because there, you know, you have ALFIs and the fraternal and sorority organizations. You have churches, right? And especially the Black church. I mean, if you want to talk about a mutual aid organization of the nth degree, talk about the Black church and what it has been in not only the Black community, but many communities, right? So I'm just proud to be the president of ALFI and really involved in a lot of organizations in Indianapolis that provide this kind of mutual aid, that when we come together, your little bit and my little bit can help a whole bunch of people.
No, thank you for that. I really would like to. I know you're a member of a fraternal organization, sorority, the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And so growing up, I've always seen what members of your sorority would do, and I was always enamored with that work. But there are so many sororities, there are so many fraternities, the National Pan-Hellenic Council, and then we think about, there's this new movie out that I think, and I'm gonna bring everybody to the stage as I start shifting here, because this the Black Panther Party, while it was not an established, if you will, fraternity, it was certainly a fraternal organization in the history of Black experience. And then their counterpart in the Latina community, being the Young Lords in Chicago. Am I right, Reverend Fernando? You nod your head.
Yeah.
So everyone's abuzz, if you will, about Judas and the Black Messiah. And so what a profound film. Have you all seen it? What do you think about it in terms of this conversation?
Well, I haven't seen it, but I'm trying to find space. I have an 8-year-old, so I have to put her to bed and make sure I have space to watch adult, movies like that. But I'm excited. I'm always energized when, and I was having this conversation with my ALFI board, that I always speak from a position of power, right? And let me tell you what I say. I think a lot of times we speak from a position of deficit, and in mutual aid, it is a position of power. It's a position that I have something. I don't care how little it is. And if you have something, I don't care how little it is. If we come together collectively in unity, we can solve some big problems. And thinking about the Black Panthers in the story, at least the story that's probably not told, is that same concept, right? The idea that we take care of each other. You are my responsibility. I am your responsibility. And we're going to bring our little bit, right? Just, Big Mama's kitchen was open to everybody, even if she only had collard greens to serve.
Chairman Fred Hampton said almost verbatim what you said, and that is wherever the people are, there is power. Where there are people, there is power. And so that kind of reciprocal relationship between power and people, we sometimes get it twisted in this American idea that we are in, that the politicians are the ones in power, right? But I'm all for power to the people, to the people say power. Brothers, do either of you have something to chime in?
Well, I haven't seen the movie yet, but obviously as a student of the Young Lords party and how it began in Chicago from a street gang and then spread to New York and in other places in the Northeast and even spread to Puerto Rico at one point, right? Mm-hmm. But it was a matter of agency. It was an agency that they were being told they didn't have, but they were fighting against that narrative. And they were saying, no, we are someone. And as a matter of fact, we're not only someone, we're going to take care of our own. And if that means taking over your institutions to do so, then so be it. And by institutions, the easy one to pick on is the government one. But in the case of the Young Lords, they took over a church that wasn't providing for that community. And that says a lot. That's a very important critique to be listening to as people of faith, right? What is our church? What is the connection of local churches to the neighborhood they're around? So, but yeah, I think is a strong sense of agency and say, no, we are someone. And this is what we mean when we say that. Now,
Reverend Andre, you gonna let me down and say you have?
No, I definitely saw this movie.
Come on with it, sir. Help us out.
It was one of the, as soon as it came out, like I think I saw it Friday when it came out. I was so excited about it because I know the story of Fred Hampton. Yes. I know the story of the Black Panthers. Being a part of Black Lives Matter, it kind of like and BYP 100. It's kind of like core curriculum. To know about the Black Panthers. The Black radical tradition is core and foundational to who I am as a person, who I am as a Black queer man, as a teacher. The story was just amazing. So yes,
no spoilers. We promise no spoilers.
I'm not no spoilers, but I have to say that there was one thing about the story of the Black Panthers, and was that again, they focused on taking care of the people. So they believed that if you take care of the people take care of you, right? And I'm not going to spoil it. I almost gave a spoiler.
You see that in the movie, right? I want to say what you're ready to say.
Exactly. But if you just know the story of Black Panthers, you know that they believed in the people. And one of the programs that I can think of, which the federal government kind of stole, but to the benefit for the people, is a free breakfast program, right? It's like, it was giving breakfast to people who were in need, to all the kids, free breakfast, tutoring, schooling, all those various things. The freedom schools kind of build off of that whole model. Like all these various things that the Black Panthers were doing, and the whole idea of mutual aid societies kind of draws upon the idea of taking care of the people, taking care of the community, to ensure the community is secure, ensure the community is safe, and ensure the community thrives. So yeah, the movie just captured all those various things beautifully. If you have not seen the movie, I highly suggest that you go ahead and see the movie. It's going to make you want to go back and do some reading. Because it gives you a little, picture interest in various things, and makes mention of little small nuggets for you to go back and study. Phenomenal movie that everyone should go see.
For all kinds of bodies. And so I deeply appreciated the ways that the story is told. Now, don't get me wrong. I do have some criticisms, as I think many people who are, as you say, students of the Black radical tradition, that there are some important criticisms. But by all means, don't let any kind of nuance criticisms that are floating around the internet keep you from seeing this important film, because we want them to win all of the awards. Amen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
And I
friends,
think good movies do that. And good movies cause you to, especially historical movies, it calls you to want to go back and do some studying.
yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. But you see, we are almost at the end of our time together, and we do have a backstage guest here. And so I'm not sure if our backstage guest has personal questions that they would like to ask. If so, I'm going to invite them, putting them in the chat. If they would like to be brought on screen to ask their question, they should give us a thumbs up and let us know that as well. But as I'm giving our backstage guests an opportunity to prepare their questions if they have them, or to put in the private chat, don't bring me out here. I want to ask the three of you the question that I ask every single one of my guests in the Soul Situations room. And that is, how do you define flourishing? And I'll give you a moment to think about it, because what this question, why this question matters to me is that good to the soul is really about doing good to the spirit of universal liberation, so we can energize all people to flourish. So when that hits your ear, how do you define flourishing? Who wants to go first? Now, don't all y'all jump up. Come on.
I'll take a crack at it.
Yes.
And I'm actually going to steal from friends of mine, Diamond Harges from Indianapolis and Mike Mather, that I first heard them use the term building community, economy, and mutual delight. So when I think about flourishing, that's what I think of the whole concept of, especially the mutual delight. We think about economics, we think about a lot of things, but there's a sense of the importance of joy that has to be at the center of all of this. And without that, I think flourishing is extremely limited.
See, I'm trying to, at the same time, go ahead and get the quote from Diamond and Pastor Mike into the chat, because
I'll put it in the chat.
I appreciate that. I already got what you said, but I just wanted to say that you were riffing off of Diamond and Pastor Mike, because this notion of building community, economy, and mutual delight, that's rich. I love it. I absolutely love it. And so thank you for speaking their names into this space. I think we met them at the same time. And so that was, that stirs my heart in a pitter-patter way. I feel very good about that. So Mrs. Davis or Reverend Andre, how do you define flourishing?
I guess I will go ahead and I think flourishing for me really encompasses all that I strive for, both in my ministry and also in my pursuit as a teacher, and that is to come alive. I think one of my favorite quotes from Howard Thurman is, "Do something that makes you come alive." Right? It is whatever makes you come alive and whatever makes your community come alive, to be your best self, to operate in full authenticity. Those are the things that, for me, what flourishing looks like, and also more than just individually, communally, being able to ensure that everyone is cared for, everyone is safe, everyone is secure, and everyone is able to pursue wherever the dreams in which they want to.
Coming alive. And thank you for speaking Ancestor Howard Thurman into the room. Coming alive. That I love the notion of being connected to coming alive, because there's so much in the world that seems to see us kind of have our soul sucked out of us, to not live and to not thrive. And so to flourish is about coming alive. Mrs. Davis, and then our backstage guest, I'm coming to you next. So if you do not want to be on the screen, I need you to say, no, don't bring me out, because I'm coming to you next. I'm going to give her a moment to make sure she knows. How do you define flourishing, Mrs. Davis?
Yeah. Wow. I think my favorite scripture in the Bible is John 10:10. You know, I come that you might have life, and that life more abundantly. And in my interpretation and what the Spirit has always spoken to me is that that there's these two lives that happening. And one is a life here on earth. So the idea of life means that I get to live it to its fullest, in joy and peace and contentment, and with all the things that my heart desires, as long as it's aligned up with what God has for me. And then this idea of life in the eternal, right? And so flourishing to me is really bringing those two things together, right? So that I know that I get to live in a sense of abundance here on earth. That I am the receiver of this idea of a heavenly inheritance in the afterlife, and those things for me come together. And it's my absolutely favorite verse because as Reverend Andre said, the idea of life. And whatever you define life as, for me, it's a lot of things, and I won't go into that. But that is my favorite verse. That I to flourish means that I get to live life here, and I get to prepare for my life eternal. And for me, those two are operating almost at the same time. And for me, that's what flourishing means.
And which scripture was that again? John
10:10.
John 10:10. Well, I thank you so much for your definition of flourishing. I thank you all so much. Let's see if everyone can come out to the stage. Mrs. Backstage Guest. Hello, Mrs. Woodard.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome. Do you need to know how to unmute yourself so you can? Oh, because you've chosen to mute yourself. Yeah. Hi, welcome. Thanks for being backstage.
Welcome. It has just absolutely been empowering to witness all this positive energy. It has absolutely been thrilling to watch about all the innovation. So thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, well, thank you. I know you might have a question. Our backstage guests tend to have those. So we, of course, make sure that if you do, that we can give you the opportunity to ask your question live here in the studio. And so if you have one, I don't want to send you back without giving you a chance to ask it.
No, I don't. As I said, I'm absorbing. I'm just absorbing all this positive energy and the whole idea of altruism, the whole idea of community. And
because I know a little bit about you, Ms. Woodard, and that is that you are very much engaged in mutual aid as you do your work throughout the denomination and in the city of Indianapolis. And so I know you're not on the panel, but what are the kinds of ways that mutual aid comes alive for you in your work?
And much of what you said is just helping those that might not necessarily be able to help themselves. It's just looking for opportunities. It's looking at what's in front of you, what needs to be done. I think about with the snow outside. I thought about my dad and how in the blizzard of '78, he never stopped driving. He went to pick up nurses. He went to pick up doctors. And I'm thinking. So it's sort of something that I think what each one of your guests has said is something that is embedded here and here, your head and your heart. You bring those things together, and opportunities for service are always there. And
Amen.
There's always opportunities to give back.
Amen.
I'm just energized by this conversation. I'm just energized.
Well, see, that's exactly why Good to the Soul exists, that we energize individuals and institutions to flourish. And so that you are energized is confirmation that the Soul Situations Room has been good to your soul. So, Ms. Woodard, we thank you for being one of our backstage guests. I'm going to send you back to the green room. If we were in live and living color, you would have cheese and crackers and a little bit of wine, because I do believe in a little bit of wine is good for the stomach. But thank you to each of you for wonderful guests. You have been just great thought partners in tonight's conversation. And so I want to give you all some final moments for closing thoughts. And that is, as we think about specifically, I know we talked about mutual aid. I know we talked about the Young Lords and the Black Panthers. We talked about sororities and fraternities. We talked about the role of the institution of the Black church. Thinking about all of these things, I want you to jump in like the Lovecraft Country wonderful episode where we were taken to the future, where I Am began to speak. Hippolyta began to share her truth. Let's think about Black and brown futures. How do mutual aid societies and institutions of communal impact and empowerment, maybe a church, maybe your sorority, maybe your fraternity, maybe an organization that you're connected to, how do these fit into your vision of flourishing Black and brown futures? Where is the hope that you would like to leave for our guests today?
Well, I will start with that. There are so many organizations. I think Andre, when he was doing his research, right, there's a disconnect in knowing who's doing what. And I think that probably is the we need community connectors. And you guys mentioned Damon and things like the roving, what does he call it? The neighborhood whisperer or something?
The roving listener.
Yeah, listener. And when I heard that concept, I thought, like, although most people will hear that and say, I don't know what that is. Really, it's the idea of connector, because there are organizations, whether they're formalized or decentralized, that are out there doing some amazing work. And if we would get behind it, so Alfie is committed. Alfie, as an entity that hopefully brings our collective money together, we are committed to funding things that are all about unity, community, all about the Black experience, and making sure our neighborhoods, our communities are healthy. And whatever part we can do, we want to do. But please do your research. There are a lot of us out there doing good work. We just need to be able to formalize that in this idea of connectors.
Yeah. So if people want to connect with Ms. Davis, all platforms except for Facebook, which is Kiana D7, make sure you do learn more about Alfie, get in there and have a conversation with her. Other two brothers, other two comrades, how shall we talk about Black futures and brown futures? And what is this thing all about?
One of the things that one of my favorite artists, Puerto Rican artists, is Residente, and he has a song that says something along the lines of "Down there in the hole or in the crater, there's flowers are flourishing by the bunches," and just this whole idea of what is in our future is already kind of budding up in our midst. We just have to have the eyes to see it. And Sister Kiana mentioned Diamond. They're doing great work in the United Northwest Neighborhood Learning Tree. And these are just one of many organizations throughout the nation that I'm sure is doing stuff from the grassroots. So I think those things like that, as someone from the church, we have to be paying very close attention to and get away from our own models, because oftentimes these mutual aid societies were founded and came about because the institutions that were supposed to serving them weren't. So what is it about ourselves as the church that we need to adjust and change to be paying attention to what the, people are doing on the grassroots, and then how to name that community and support that community?
Ooh, so you mean we can't just stay in the church and expect the people to come to us? We got to be like, listen to people out there.
I would say we have to be the church and be out there. Not staying in the church doesn't make sense to me as far as the definition of the church, but that sounds like a whole different episode.
Woo! wait, a whole different episode that I'm hearing you saying you're going to come back for. But seriously, Reverend Fernando, thanks so much. If you want to connect with Reverend Fernando on Twitter, RQ Nando is how you catch him. So you can dig a little bit deeper into keeping your ear on the ground. Even though he's in Denver, it sounds like he still has some connections all across the country. I think he can hook you up if you need it. But last but not least, the Reverend Andre Guilford Jr. Talk to me about Black futures. What you say?
So it's interesting you said Black futures because BYP 100 connotes this month as not just Black History Month, but also Black Futures Month. And thinking about Black futures, I'm thinking about a place where all Black people have access to quality food. So there's a major movement of urban farming across the country, specifically here in Detroit, where Black people are able to, or people in general who need food, can access quality, good food. Also, good education, right? Quality education that speaks to the minds and hearts of our young children, making certain that they are able to build themselves and celebrate who they are as Black children. That for me is what a true Black future looks like, and really institutions that we have in our community, such as NAACP, BLM, other churches, really serve as a basis for supporting Black communities and their growth and thriving across the nation. I feel like these things are possible, and they're near and dear to my heart, and they're very much near to happening as long as we stay vigilant and stay focused on the goal.
Now, Reverend Andre, I know we have a way to connect with you, but before I let you go, I for the non-millennials, because our show is really watched by people who are much older than the millennial generation. And so you threw a lot of alphabet soup out here at us. BYP, BLM. Help us out. What are these things? BYP.
BYP is Black Youth Project 100. They have chapters across the country, but headquartered in Chicago, and Black Lives Matter organization. Everyone knows about Black Lives Matter. Affiliates across the country, and based in New York, I believe. So those are some key things. But I do also want to mention that if you want to get connected to an organization, you definitely want to look up freedom schools in your area. So there are freedom schools happening across the country, both connected to the Children's Defense Fund, and also those that are independent, especially in the midst of this virtual schooling, that are trying to supplement what's happening with the virtual schooling, creating these pods, if you would, for kids to be able to learn. So there's so much need out there. I can go on and on, but that's one place to start.
Well, that is a lot of places to start. Our guests are throwing up hearts and they're throwing up likes. So give them some comments. Let our guests, viewers, let our guests know how much you appreciate them spending an hour with us here on a Monday night. The 15th of the month falls on all kinds of days, and this month on a Monday night. So I just thank you all. I know it's been a long day of work and school and parenting and partnering and all of the things that each of you do, that you could have said no, absolutely to me, but you said yes, not only to me, but to our viewers and to our backstage guests. And so I want to thank you from the very bottom of my heart for being present here tonight. If there is anything else that you'd like to say before I send you back and I give our closing remarks. Wait, before you do, our guests, I know we normally have the Clubhouse after party, but it's Monday night, friends. And tonight that won't happen, but you can catch us for the Clubhouse after party. We'll set a date to do an after party for this show and sometime in the near future that is not a late Monday night, because we want to be responsible. Even though you you may be experiencing the polar vortex. We want to be responsible.
Or snowstorm.
It's a snowstorm out here. No one should be out in the
Right.
Midwest. No one. I do, Reverend Shonda, I do want to say, if you're in the Indianapolis area, we would love for you to be a part of the African American Legacy Fund. It is a fund where everyone gets a seat at the table to help elevate the greatness in our community and hopefully solve whatever those issues are that we have. So check us out. We are a fund of CICF. And our goal is to not only give money away, but really teach about giving, philanthropy, et cetera, in our community. So check us out on CICF's website.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, that's a whole lot to try to get. I don't know if it's going to pop up so y'all can click it. But if not, you can reach out to Mrs. Davis, as you saw on all the platforms. She will make sure that you get fully connected so that you can be a part of the African American Legacy Fund, which I am very proud to be a part of. I'm not rich, but the thing about it, you don't have to be rich to be a philanthropist in 2021. So friends, make sure you are doing your part, because each of us doing our part is where the least place that we can start and we can see our communities changing for the good. So we're going to bid our guests farewell, farewell. Thank you for being with us. Good to the Soul, our Facebook friends, our YouTube friends. Let my guests know that you love them. Send up some hearts, some love, and all kinds of ways of affirmation in the comments. Been a wonderful, rich night to be present with each and every one of you. I'm so grateful that you continue to follow this work. You continue to sow into this work. You continue to support this work. And so how can you do that? Well, if you'd like to, you can cash app us at Good to the Soul. We try to be a blessing to each of our guests. They don't ask for it, but we try to do it out of the kindness of our hearts. So anything you do to invest in Good to the Soul, we always send it right back out, because we're about creating wealth for philanthropic good. So you can cash app us if you so desire, but you can also feel free to head on over to www.goodtothesoul.com and make sure that you are following and learning all about what we do in the social enterprise. The Soul Situations Room isn't the only thing, and we may have a service, a product, or offering that you've been looking for your institution, or even you as an individual to be energized to maximize your performance and your missional activity. So don't flounder. Come and let us do those things that enable you to flourish. So friends, that's it for the night. I have been your host, the Reverend Shonda Nicole Gladden, the CEO of Good to the Soul, and I thank you that you chose to spend a little bit of time with me. I will see you next month, March the 15th at 8:15 p.m. where we'll have a soulful conversation around women making power moves. You don't want to miss it. I'll see you March 15th at 8:15 p.m. But until then, make sure you keep doing everything that is good to the soul. I love you. See you next time.